Hello, everybody. This is Jimmy, and you're reading with Jimmy. Today, we're going to analyze in order to understand The Piece of String by Guy de Maupassant. Hopefully, you read it with Jimmy. Wasn't that a wonderful story? So, we're going to begin our analysis, which is, it's a very short story, but it's a very powerful story. In fact, what a story. Poor Mr. Hauchecorne of Bertaux couldn't convince people that he didn't take the missing wallet. You remember the story? Somebody lost the wallet. Hauchecorne got the blame. Nobody would believe him. No matter how hard he insisted, people just wouldn't believe him, would they? In fact, the more he insisted he didn't take that wallet, that it was a piece of string that he picked up, the more that they didn't believe him. And so, quote, he started visibly wasting away and died. So it's a sad story, actually. It's about truth, character, and obsession. Remember those three words. We're going to talk about that throughout this analysis. Truth, character, and obsession. And it's told in beautiful language by a master storyteller, Guy de Maupassant, in just 2,500 words. That's all he needed to tell this story. Isn't that amazing? And it was translated with equal care by Roger Collette, who does all of our translating of Maupassant on this website. So this is an analysis of The Piece of String, and if you've been reading with me for a while, you know Jimmy doesn't like to give away the meaning of a story right off the bat. I like to crawl to the meaning so we understand and appreciate all the words around that meaning. Because if I give you the meaning right away, it kind of takes away from understanding and the appreciation of the story, right? But there's always an exception to a rule. And in this case, I'm going to make that exception as we analyze this one. I think knowing what the third-person narrator tells us up front helps us better understand the key elements of this story. Remember the words: obsession, truth, character. Not in that order. So here's the key that Hauchecorne realized after being accused of getting an accomplice to return the missing wallet. Remember that scene where he finally realized he's being accused of finding someone else to turn in the wallet that theoretically he picked up when he didn't do it? He, Hauchecorne, returned home ashamed and indignant, choking with anger and embarrassment, all the more upset in that he was quite capable, with his Norman cunning, of doing what he was accused of having done, and even boasting of it as a clever trick. And he dimly realized that since his duplicity was widely known, it was impossible to prove his innocence. So he's returning home ashamed, he's ticked off, he's really pissed. And he realizes that because he has this reputation of being cunning and duplicitous, no matter what he says, he's not going to be able to prove to people he did not take that wallet. He's pretty much doomed, right? That's the key, and that's why he visibly, he dies. He visibly wastes away. So what is duplicity? It's deceitfulness, double dealing. He's a double dealer. He's a rogue. He's a rascal, the con artist, right? So if Hauchecorne was known for being deceitful and double dealing, according to our narrator, well, then a person's natural conclusion might be that he took the wallet, especially if the mayor summoned him, which he did. And when he was accused by the mayor, he got someone else to turn it in, which fit his duplicity nature, doesn't it? Or does it? What is the truth in this case? Did he or didn't he? Before I do that, I want you to think about this, that often what you think about a person colors your judgment of the person. Would you agree with that? I want you to think about this importantly. What people judge you as often colors their judgment about you as well. Now, is it the truth or is it not the truth when they judge you? That's the question. And when you judge other people, Is it the truth or not the truth? Remember what we're talking about here, obsession, truth, and character, right? So many people, I get a lot of emails, but many of them are my insistence in talking about who narrates a story. So if you've read with me for a while and you read my analysis, I'm always concerned about the type of narrator that's telling us stories. Why? Well, because it's important. And the piece of string is a prime example of why narration point of view is important. So it's also important to understanding what is the truth when you're looking at narrators, third person versus first person narrators. So let's start with narration this time for the piece of string rather than the plot. This story is third person narration. That means that the person telling us this story is outside the story. It's like the narrator, the third person narrator, is hovering over the scene, going in and out, following this character or that character, and telling us what he, she wants us to know. What the narrator wants us to know is what he tells us. I use he in the universal sense. So in third person narration, we have to believe what we're being told. In other words, we can't doubt that. I gave you, sometimes when there's a third person narrator question, like in one of Maupassant's story about a duel, for example, I told you there's one word in what the third person narrator was saying that could be a translation error or it could be a writing error. But in any case, third person narrator is outside, omniscient, godlike, and we have to believe him. He's always telling us the truth. So if he says Hauchecorne picked up a piece of string, he picked up a piece of string. Because if you don't believe the narrator, if we don't believe he picked up that piece of string, this story makes absolutely no sense. Would you agree with that? So I got an email saying exactly from someone who thought that Hauchecorne had stolen the wallet. And that's what he picked up. He picked up the wallet, Jimmy. But unfortunately, as I replied to the emailer, there's no evidence that this happened. There's absolutely no evidence from the third person narrator that this happened. All we have is Marladin's accusation against Hauchecorne that he picked up the wallet. But the third person narrator told us he picked up a piece of string. Well, what if the third person narrator was lying, Jimmy? Well, what if? Well, it's impossible. In classical literature, the third person narrator never lies. He's the omniscient narrator. He's outside the story. There's no reason for him to lie, right? So you can reread this story many times and you're not going to find a clue that was anything but string. We're going to talk about that also in a little bit. So the beauty of examining narration in classical literature, whether it's third or first, is that when we read it, we can go back and we can examine the evidence closely, which you can't do in real life, can you? Unless you record the incident. And even if you record it or you take a picture and you go back and you look at this picture, well, pictures can be altered, right? But classical literature is classical literature. Now, in this case, you can get a different translation, but I will bet you, because I've read more than Colette's translations, that it's not a wallet that Hauchecorne picks up, ever. It's a piece of string. It's a piece of string. So the key to the piece of string I gave you up front. It's the third person narrator telling us Hauchecorne was known for being deceitful, and that knowledge is why people didn't believe him about the string. Even when he picks up the string, you remember what he did when he realized that Marladin was watching him? What did he do? Well, he pretended to pick up some more things on the ground. You see what I'm saying? Oh, no, he's watching me. I got to do something. You see what I'm saying? So now, because he's deceitful and he's a double dealer, that may be why Mr. Marladin, who snitched to the mayor about Hauchecorne bending down to pick something up, did what he did. And we're going to examine that later. What do you mean did what he did? Well, why Maladin reported that he picked up a wallet when in fact he probably knew he didn't pick up a wallet, or he saw him picking up something. Who knows? But Maladin did tell the mayor that he saw this guy picking up the wallet, Hauchecorne, who then went on to bring him into his office to interrogate him. And of course, Maladin, since he was quarreling, remember that? That's a little detail. They had a quarrel over a halter. Could have been making it up. But he did see Hauchecorne bend down, pick something up, because the narrator tells us Hauchecorne saw him watching. That's why it's so important to understand third-person narration. That may have been enough for him to make up the story after missing the wallet story emerge. Remember, it didn't come out right away. Here's the story. This is the third-person narrator, so you got to believe him. He picked up the piece of thin cord, was about to roll it up carefully when he noticed Mr. Maladin, the saddler, standing at his door watching him. They had had a quarrel sometime before over a halter, and they had remained on bad terms ever since, both of them being the sort to nurse a grudge. See, that's important. They nursed a grudge. Mr. Hauchecorne felt a little shamefaced at being seen by his enemy like this. Enemy. He's not a friend. Picking up a bit of string out of the muck. So he hurriedly concealed his find first under his smock and then in his trouser pocket. So he hid it. And then he pretended to go on looking for something on the ground which he couldn't find. Now that behavior, if you're an observer, if you're outside watching this guy behave, it doesn't have to be his enemy. It could have been any one of the people there. He first hides it, right? He puts it in his smock and then in his pocket, but he goes on looking on the ground as if it's something he couldn't find before continuing on his way, leaning forward, bent double by his rheumatism. So he's got rheumatism. If you do not believe all this, if you don't believe all this, ladies and gentlemen, the rest of the story makes no sense. Does it? If you don't believe what I just read, what the third-person narrator told you. And if you had a person inside the story talking, a first-person narrator, this story would have been entirely different. For example, if Maladin, the saddler, was telling the story, he would have insisted to us that he saw Hauchecorne pick up that wallet. He'd be lying to us, wouldn't he? How would you know that? How would you know he's lying? Is he lying? Well, he's lying. Why do we know he's lying? Because the third-person narrator said he's lying. You see how important narration is? Do you see that? So if you were to rewrite this story from the saddler's point of view, Maladin, you'd lie. You'd be telling, no, I saw him pick up the wallet. So I went to the mayor, and I told the mayor, and he drafted him. The mayor called me up. We argued for an hour. But you'd never know he's lying, would you? Unless he slipped. And that slip-up may have come later when actually he was walking there and he started laughing at Hauchecorne because Hauchecorne tried to say he never did it. So that would be a tough point of view, wouldn't it? So third-person narration is the omniscient narrator, and we have to believe him. He, Hauchecorne, dimly realized that since his duplicity was widely known, it was impossible to prove his innocence. Then the story makes completely sense. He dies, he wastes away, he keeps insisting, I'm innocent, but nobody believes him. You understand? He becomes obsessed, one of the words I told you to remember, with maintaining his innocence, and he dies as a result of his obsession. His obsession kills him. His duplicity is his own undoing. So being a double dealer actually ends up killing him, right? Because he can't prove he's not, because he is. He should have just took credit for it. Because the wallet was, after all, returned. You understand? The wallet was returned. No harm, no foul. Interesting, isn't it? Plot. Jimmy tells you all the time, and there's a long footnote that I give you every time, and you should read it. You can pause and read it. Because Aristotle was an ancient philosopher, intellectual. Today, if people don't study or read him like anything else, his influences fall away, which is why I bring him up every time, because I don't want his influence to fall away. He has had a tremendous impact on literature, understanding literature, on Jimmy, and on you, because we will read or have read the Poetics by Aristotle on this website. So he tells us all the time tragedy has 6 elements. Tragedy is really the imitation of an action. This is a tragedy, isn't it? Not in the sense that somebody dies, although they do, but it's a tragedy. What is tragedy, according to Aristotle? Serious, complete, and of a certain magnitude, right? Through pity and fear, affecting the proper purgation, catharsis of emotions, of pity and fear. It's not what we define tragedy as today, right? But it is, that's what tragedy is. It's pity and fear. Example, even if you see an accident, there's pity and fear, catharsis, purging of emotions. Thank God it wasn't me. See? You understand? Aristotle says 6 main elements in tragedy: plot, character, diction, thought, spectacle, and song, of which plot and character are primary. The most important of the 6 is the plot. What's the plot? It's the representation of human action, which this story has, right? Throughout the story, there's human action. From the time you see the peasants walking on the road to Gotterville to the time that Hauchecorne lays wasting away and dies. So plots can be simple or complex. Aristotle indicates that complex plots are required for successful stories. And I put a footnote here, types of sentences: simple, compound, complex, compound, complex. The more complex the sentence, the deeper the understanding. See John Run, or John runs. That's a simple sentence, right? John runs while he was balancing a bunch of plates on his head before he fell down the hill. That's a complex sentence, much more deeper, right? So the piece of string is a complex plot, complex, and Hauchecorne's actions drive the plot forward. He keeps insisting he's innocent, gets interrogated by the mayor, blah, blah, blah. According to Aristotle, the plot is complex when it includes a reversal of the situation or a recognition, or a recognition. In other words, a complex plot is where the change of fortune results of the events that came before it. There's a logical sequence of events, and then suddenly, bam, the situation or recognition reverses itself or recognizes. And it's rather than being a random occurrence. This is not random, is it? You can see this is a complex plot because everything stems from the piece of string Hauchecorne picks up. Everything. That's where the whole mess starts, right? And the subsequent events unfold. Also, Hauchecorne has a recognition twice. Once when he realizes that it was Maladine who accused him to the mayor. Remember, he doesn't come from Gotterville. He's from a different town. So he's not known in this town. Maladine is known in this town. Maladine, right? Maladine. And he accused him to the mayor. Then the old man, this is Hauchecorne, remembered and understood and flushed with anger. So he's seen me, did he? The bastard. He's seen me pick up this piece of string. Mayor, look, and then he's saying, here's what I took, the string, the plane. And the second time he had recognition is after the wallet was returned, and Hauchecorne realized that people believed that's just what someone with his reputation could do. And at last he understood he was being accused of getting an accomplice to return the wallet. That was the second recognition in this complex plot. The plot must also be defined by displaying a beginning, a middle, and an end. and it must be sufficient length to fully represent the course of actions, but not so long that it bores the audience to death. And you can see in the piece of string the beginning at the market where Hauchecorne arrives, picks up the string to the middle where he's accused of taking the wallet. You see that? That's the middle, right, where he's accused. And then the end when he dies. Beginning, middle, and end. Any questions? Jimmy at readingwithjimmy.com. Jimmy at readingwithjimmy.com. So, what's the plot of this story? Well, it's pretty simple, isn't it? Hauchecorne goes to the market, picks up a piece of string, is seen by a person that he had an argument who reports him to the police. It's probably the guy who picked up the lost wallet. He's questioned by the mayor. He's released. The wallet's found, but people still believe Hauchecorne took it. Hauchecorne keeps telling everyone he meets he didn't do it, but no one believes him. No one believes him. He stays at it and then wastes away and he dies, quote, protesting his innocence, repeating over and over and over again, a bit of string, a bit of string. Look, Mayor, here it is. It's a sad story, isn't it? The phrase that came to my mind when I read this story was, methinks thou protestest too much. Remember that. I think you're protesting too much. This is spoken by Queen Gertrude in Shakespeare's play Hamlet, which, by the way, is on Jimmy's website. You should read it. It's a play, and I'm not dumbing it down, ladies and gentlemen. This is the original Shakespearean Hamlet. So please enjoy it. But the full line is actually, the lady doth protest too much, methinks. So if you remember, Queen Gertrude in Hamlet was Hamlet's mother who married Hamlet's uncle, Claudius, after Claudius killed Hamlet's father. It's a complex story, complex drama, very, very well written by Shakespeare. Although it's third person, you'll see when we talk about that. You could say Shakespeare is the writer, but it's a third-person narrator telling us this beautiful story. But it means that someone is protesting or denying something too strongly. No, I didn't do it, which could indicate they're not being truthful, that in fact maybe they did do it, and that whatever they are protesting against, they actually did. And that's exactly what happens with Hauchecorne. He keeps saying, he didn't do it, I didn't do it. And as a result, nobody believes him. If he would have just shut up, taken credit for the event, well, Jimmy, he didn't do it. He's innocent. Well, that doesn't matter. And you're going to see here, justice is interesting, isn't it? Whether you're studying justice in this play or justice in real life around what's going on today. You could be very innocent or you could be guilty, and you could be judged by a jury of your peers to be the exact opposite of what you are. Right? You understand this. How many times has an innocent person been convicted? And how many times has a person guilty been found innocent? I don't want to mention any names or any trials, but if the glove fits, you must acquit. There's no doubt in my mind that he killed his wife. Is there a doubt in your mind? There's no doubt. No doubt, but he got released. Have you ever been accused of something you didn't do? I'd like you to think about that question for a minute. Have you, ladies and gentlemen, ever been accused of something you didn't do? And then how did you defend yourselves? Did you insist on it? Did they finally find out you didn't do it? What did you do? And how did you get accused? Somebody made some crap up about you? Were you like Hauchecorne and saying over and over again, I didn't do it, I'm innocent? Until you yourself wasted away. I'm kidding. But what if you did? You've seen situations like this on television and movies where innocent people get accused, and despite everything. Just watch Perry Mason. What makes somebody guilty, by the way, and what makes somebody innocent? Why couldn't Hauchecorne just let it go? There's a great Rambo movie, right? The first Rambo movie, where Brian, I forgot his name, Brian Dennehy is the sheriff, and he gets up a tree, and Rambo's got a knife at his neck, and he says, "Just let it go. Let it go." Because the sheriff was obsessed with hunting down Rambo because Rambo did some, whatever, right? He broke out of jail. They had arrested him for some minor infraction, and he broke out of jail. Did he provoke everyone by insisting on his innocence? Hauchecorne. And if he had the reputation of being a rascal, a double dealer, why didn't he just accept the credit for the event? That would have been a lot easier and actually would have what? Yeah, would have puffed him up a little bit. Yeah, I'm pretty clever, ain't I? But it was this string that he picked up that drove him nuts, that he didn't do it. This time, he's innocent, and nobody would believe him. You remember the fairy tale, The Boy Who Cried Wolf, right? He was guarding sheep, he cried wolf, and the townspeople came out, and there was no wolf. What did he do that 2 or 3 times? And the third time, there really was a wolf, and they didn't come out. They didn't believe him anymore. This is similar. Little reverse whammy going on, but similar. And what made Hauchecorne so insistent? Why did he decide, or did he just, I don't know, why did he decide that he's got to prove that he's innocent, that he couldn't just take the hit, which is not a hit in this case, because there was no harm. Remember, the wallet was returned. So these 6 elements, the next element that's important is character. So character is very important, and Aristotle believed character was the second most important, and that character should be believable. Are these people believable in your opinion? I think they are. When people have grudges, they make shit up, right? Don't they? If a person has a grudge against you or you have a grudge against the person, you may make something up. And that their attributes should conform to what would be expected from similar people in real life. That's why I really like Guy de Maupassant, because he when he writes through his narrators, he really describes people from real life. And remember, people, we read to learn how to lead our lives from other people. But as Dostoevsky says, the people you meet in literature, classical literature, are more real than real life itself. This is true. Have you ever met a Hauchecorne, a double dealer? Have you ever met somebody who's innocent and yet found guilty? Have you ever done that? Have you ever held a grudge? Do you hold a grudge, or do you just forgive and forget? Right? There's people who hold grudges and they act in very similar ways, right? They can't let go. I don't want to cast stones, because right, he's without sin cast the first stone. But I when I first got married a long time ago, there was a situation where one of my in-laws held a grudge for 25 years with another family. When I found that out, that was amazing, because when did that happen? And my wife said 25 years ago. I go, wow. There are 2 main characters, Hauchecorne and Maladine. And we learn about these characters from their speech, from their actions, and from what others say about them, don't we? In this case, we learn about them from what other people say and through the third person narrator, right? So other people in the story talk about them. Third person narrator talks about them. They act in a certain way. The narrator tells us how they're acting, and that's how we get to learn about them. Like when Maladine, busts out laughing as Hauchecorne comes into town again and is basically insisting, after the wallet was found, that I didn't have anything to do with it. He busts out laughing, and then Hauchecorne wondering why he's laughing. We know a lot about Hauchecorne. He's basically a rascal who, while he could have done something like find the wallet and when confronted, give it to someone else, he really found a piece of string. He is seen bending over for the string, and Maladine, who he had a quarrel with before over a halter. Remember? So there is no love lost between these 2 guys. But what about Maladine? What do we know about him? Maladine, the guy who accused Hauchecorne. Well, the mayor notes about him, you will never persuade me that Mature Hauchecorne, he's talking to Hauchecorne when he's interrogating him. You'll never persuade me, sir, that Monsieur Maladin, right, who is a man that can be trusted, and that he mistook a piece of string for a wallet. You're never going to convince me of that. Is Maladin a man to be trusted? Is he a man to be trusted, ladies and gentlemen? The third person narrator said this. If the third person narrator said that Maladin was a man to be trusted, I would say yes. But the third person narrator didn't say that. The mayor did. So the mayor might be wrong. Why do I say that? Well, because the mayor is inside the story. The mayor is the mayor of Gonnerville, right? Maladin lives in Gonnerville. And guess who doesn't live in Gonnerville? Hauchecorne. So the mayor brings in Maladin. Hauchecorne, was confronted with Mr. Maladin, who repeated and maintained his statement. What was his statement? That you picked up the wallet. You're the guy who picked up the wallet. And even though it was returned a day or two later, you're the guy who picked it up. You probably gave it to someone else and they turned it in. And Hauchecorne said, BS. And they argued and hurled insults at each other for an hour. Do you know what an hour is? That's a long time to be arguing with somebody. An hour. Whew. Later, they find the wallet. Maladin, standing at his door, burst out laughing when he saw Hauchecorne go by. Why? Did Maladin get even with Hauchecorne because of the quarrel they had over the halter? Well, that certainly is a possibility. And we're going to find out if you believe it, but Jimmy's going to tell you what he believes before we're done with this analysis. Character and virtue. Aristotle believed that moral character, what's that? Good and bad. Morality is good and bad, is determined by the structure of acts and how they fit together into the whole with justice and friendship. And in this story, the two main characters act according to their moral characters, right? They're both, right, peasants, tradesmen. They had a quarrel. They have a grudge. And he picks up a piece of string because you never know when you can use a piece of string. Would you pick up a piece of string? I know I would pick up a dime if I saw it on the street, which I have done. Jimmy's even picked up a penny. Why? It's a lucky penny. Somebody told me, pick up the penny. What do you buy for a penny these days? So they had a quarrel, and for some reason, Maladin says that he saw Hauchecorne picking up a wallet. But we don't know that's not true. We know that's not true, pardon me, that he did not see. He says he did, but we know that Hauchecorne did not pick up a wallet. Why? Because the third person narrator said it was string. And don't give me this, well, I didn't believe the third person narrator. Well, then don't even read the classical literature. In the rules of classical literature, the third person narrator never lies. Never lies. Can't lie. Can't lie. Because if he lies, then, Jesus, the whole story doesn't make sense. None of it. So he can't lie. First person narrators can lie. Right? Just like Maladin is lying. I believe he's lying. He's lying. So we know Maladin is making it up. Or is he? Is he? I think Jimmy believes that he's making it up. Now, how do I know that? Well, because Maladin knows Hauchecorne's character. Don't forget he dealt with him. He's a double dealer. They argued over a halter, whatever it is. Who came out on top on the argument? Probably Hauchecorne, because he's a double dealer, right? Hauchecorne's duplicity was widely known, not just by Maladin, but by everybody. So the story never tells us what the quarrel was about the halter. But they remained on bad terms and they had a grudge. There was a grudge. A grudge. Right? Everyone else is reacting to Hauchecorne the same way. That's a great piece of evidence. They, like Maladin, know that Hauchecorne is a bit of a rascal. He's a double dealer, right? Even though he's not he doesn't come from Gonnerville, he's got this reputation. So they don't believe him. No, that's impossible. You didn't. Why would you pick up a string, you old flint, right? You're a dull. You had the wallet, and then when they announced that it was stolen, you gave it to somebody else to turn in. That's what happened. But it didn't happen, did it? He picked up the string. And you know who picked up the wallet, right? So it's important to note Aristotle believed virtue existed on a spectrum between deficiency and excess. Virtue, goodness, badness. It's a spectrum. It's deficient and too much. And that the strengths could become weaknesses and weaknesses become strength and so on and so forth. And that's true in life, isn't it? We're going to talk about this. Sometimes a strength becomes a weakness. Hauchecorne's duplicity, that's what he was known for, turned against him by Maladine's interpretation of what he picked up. He made up a lie, and because he was duplicit, he had a rascal nature. He was duplicity. He was known as a double dealer. He couldn't get out of that. Can't get out of it. There's no way they're going to believe I picked up a stupid piece of string. You see? Couldn't do it. Character and action. Aristotle believes characters cannot act without reference to a situation in which they are placed. He also believed that a passive character would produce no action and so has no place in drama. So the characters in this story always are acting with reference to that situation. What situation? What? Picking up the string. Hauchecorne's picking up the string is what starts this whole domino effect of the actions. Maladine accuses him. Third-person narrator clears him by telling us, no, it's a piece of string. And then the characters are developed. Believable, lifelike, giving them traits, emotion, and so on. And that's what happens in the case of the piece of string, isn't it? Point of view. What if Maladine really thought he saw Hauchecorne pick up the wallet? What if he really thought he saw him pick up a wallet? There's no evidence that he really thought that. It's sometime after Hauchecorne picks up the string that the town crier shows up to make the announcement about the wallet. So more time passed finishing their coffee when the police show up and they ask if Hauchecorne is there. So sometime between the town crier's announcement and the time that everybody sitting in Jourdain's restaurant is finishing their coffee, the cops show up and they take Hauchecorne to see the mayor. This means that Maladine had time to file his observations. He had time to go to the mayor and say, I saw the guy. I saw the guy. It's Hauchecorne. I saw this guy. So the mayor makes his accusation, right? You were seen this morning on Brezaville Road picking up a wallet lost by Holbrook of Manorville, or Bricule, right? Hauchecorne denies it, of course, because it's not true. He did pick up string, and when he asked who said it, the mayor says Maladine. So the next day in the afternoon, after this encounter with the mayor and Maladine, Marius Pummel, a laborer on Mr. Breton's farm in Yamaville, about an hour away from Gotterville. All these towns are connected. If you look at geography, they're still there, even though this is an old story. They returned the wallet and its contents to Holbrook of Manorville, about 8 hours away from Gotterville. So these people traveled long distances to get to the market. That's why that first page of the story is entirely devoted to the people on that road to the market. There's a reason. We're going to talk about that before we finish. So the guy who found it can't read. So his employer told him whose wallet it was, and he returned it. Got it? That's the third person narrator telling us this. So that's the truth. This guy found it. He can't read. He showed it to his boss. His boss says, this is who it belongs to. And, right, about an hour away, he returns the wallet to Mr. Holbrook of Manorville. What really got my goat, Hauchecorne said, wasn't so much the thing, the accusation, but the lies. The lies got his goat, right? There's nothing worse than being blamed on account of a lie. Is that true? Can you think of anything worse? How about torture, having your nails ripped off? That's pretty bad, isn't it? But being accused, remember, the mind is a lot of times mental anguish is more devastating than physical anguish. We talk about that in several stories. So he keeps talking about the incident, telling everyone, but then he gets the feeling that nobody believes him. And then he gets odd feelings still, something's still wrong. And note the following, but they found the wallet, he would tell people. The other man retorted, give over, shut up, Grandpa. Him as brings a thing back isn't always him as finds it. Remember, these are peasants, right? They're not sophisticated aristocrats, right? Him that brings a thing back isn't always him that finds it. But mum's the word. The peasant, Hauchecorne, was speechless. And at last he understood. He was being accused of getting an accomplice to return the wallet. You see? And that's why Maladin was laughing at him, isn't it? Boy, talk about revenge over a grudge. Boy, did he get Hauchecorne, huh? Huh? Jimmy's guess is Maladin played Hauchecorne like a violin. Well, we meet him, Hauchecorne of Brentwood, as he arrived in Gotterville and was making his way toward Market Square. The narrator doesn't tell us what road Hauchecorne was on, or if he was on that road where the wallet was lost. But we know from narration later that it was on the Brazil, right? The Brazzaville Road, the Brazzaville Road, where the wallet was lost. If you know your geography, that's the road both Hauchecorne and Holbrook would have taken to Gotterville, the guy who lost the wallet. So it's not entirely easy. Like if you deep dive this story and you're, oh, Jimmy, I looked at the geography. I looked it up. In fact, I'm from France. I know these cities. True, right? So that's why it's not easy to tell what Madeleine saw or what he didn't see or where he saw it as Madeleine he lives there. But we do know that he and Hauchecorne have a grudge. Don't you feel like a lawyer arguing? We know Hauchecorne is duplicitous. Is he the same way? I don't know. I'd say he did a good job on Hauchecorne. So the gist of the story is whether it was perception by Maladin or did he lie and make it up. But regardless, whether he really thought he saw the wallet, him pick up a wallet, which is hard to believe if you see a guy picking up a piece of string that it's a wallet. But it doesn't matter whether he did or he didn't, whether he's lying or not lying, right? Because what happened is he put into motion Hauchecorne's obsession, right? Hauchecorne, right? I would call what Hauchecorne does obsession. What is obsession? Well, it's an intense, persistent preoccupation with a person, idea, object, or activity. And you see this all the time in movies. You yourself, are you obsessed by anybody or anything? Right? Are you a workaholic? Are you obsessed with work? Are you obsessed by sports? Oh, I got to see that game. You can't get it out of your mind. I once saw the president of a company watching a Cubs game during the middle of the day. And because the pitcher threw a bad pitch, threw something and broke his television set. He was so obsessed. This is an important topic, ladies and gentlemen, obsession. Because obsession can have positive points, like when it fuels dedication. This is what you can read on your own. Focus on being perfect. Michael Jordan shot 1,000 free throws a day, right? Michael Jordan. I would say that's obsession. But I was fortunate enough to see him play 2 or 3 times when I was in Chicago and he was playing basketball. And I'm not a basketball junkie, but boy, that guy could fly. I swear to God, he defied gravity. It often can flip and become negative whenever you are obsessed with becomes all-consuming and interfering with balance. Balance is an important word, right? Well-being. But the explanation isn't exactly true, is it? So let me ask you again, have you ever been obsessed or are you obsessed with anything? That's a pause. Does your obsession, here's the key, does your obsession control you or do you control your obsession? Well, Jimmy, my obsession is to be the best that I do. And I work at, I just want to be the best. Well, it's a good obsession, but is it? If you sacrifice everything for that obsession, maybe it isn't so good. If your obsession controls you, in other words, if you don't know you're obsessed, you're just obsessed. What do you mean? Well, does an alcoholic know he's an alcoholic? I never met an alcoholic that when you say you're an alcoholic doesn't say, no, I'm not. Do you understand what I'm saying? The true alcoholic does not know that he's addicted to alcohol and he's obsessed with drinking. They don't know it. When you're truly obsessed, you don't know it. Hauchecorne didn't know he's truly obsessed. Did he? Or did he? He just kept driving. I didn't take it. I didn't take it. He's telling everybody. Let me tell you. And he keeps talking about it. Right? If someone shook him, for example, if you shook Hauchecorne and said, wake up, stop that, you're obsessed. No, I'm not. I didn't take the string. He would keep arguing, right? So if your obsession controls you, that's not good. But if you control your obsession, like Michael Jordan did his 1,000 free throws and walked away, that's positive, right? Can you understand that? So Jimmy defines obsession as not knowing when enough is enough. You don't know when enough is enough. If you don't know when enough is enough, I got news for you, ladies and gentlemen. You are obsessed. You're obsessed. And you better do something about it. William Blake, the great English poet, my favorite, said, you never know what's enough. You never know what is enough. Sorry. You never know what is enough until you know what's more than enough. Say it again. You never know what's enough until you know what's more than enough, which is a dangerous definition. For example, weightlifting. You never know what's enough when you're weightlifting until you know what's more than enough. You strain a muscle, right? Or you break a muscle, you injure yourself. That's not good. So that's a dangerous saying, but it's a true saying. You don't really know what's enough until you know what's more than enough. So you have the rule is you have to come to just before more than enough. Just before. That takes discipline, study. You understand that? Take Hauchecorne. He was obsessed with being falsely accused, taking a wallet, when he took a piece of string. And the reason he couldn't convince anyone of his innocence is because of his character. He was a double dealer. I'm not a liar, when in fact you always lie. I'm not lying this time. Well, what do you mean? You've lied all the time. You see what I'm saying? So your character gets in front of the situation sometimes. People didn't accept his explanation of the truth. And we know it was the truth because the third person narrator told us it's the truth. You understand? Without that third person narrator, it's Hauchecorne against Madeleine. You don't know it's the truth. The third person told us it's the truth. It was the string. He picked up the string. And you know the truth. You are your own third person narrator. You know what you did. You know what you didn't do. No matter what people tell you, no matter what people say about you, you know the truth. You see what I'm saying and suggesting to you? Each of us are our own third-person narrators, right? To ourselves. We narrate to ourselves. Jimmy, you're a bad guy. Well, why? Because you didn't help that lady across the street. Well, I didn't tell anybody. I told people I did. You lied. You see what I'm saying? You start spiraling. Socrates said, know thyself. That's one of the most primary rules of life. Know thyself. You can't know other people unless you know yourself. I had a discussion the other day about what is reality. What is reality? Right? We were talking about something else, but the topic came out. What is reality? There's a great movie. There's a war movie with Martin Sheen. They had a good sergeant and a bad sergeant in this movie. And the bad sergeant was Tom Berenger. And he was drinking and he came into the foxhole and they're all smoking dope, and and he's got a bottle in his hand and he says, what are you guys doing? And he takes a sip of the booze. He says, what are you guys doing? You're trying to escape reality? And he takes another sip of his booze and he goes, I'm reality. That's a powerful scene because he had their lives in his hands. He's the one who sent them into the bush. He's the one who decided who goes on a point, who doesn't go on point, right? You understand? And then what is reality in this case? Well, the good news about classical literature is we have the third person narrator to tell us reality. He picked up the string. That's the reality. And so the rest of it, we can figure it out. Once we know that one point of reality, that he did do the string, the rest we start deducing and, deduction and reasoning, connotation, denotation, right? That's what we do as human beings. We look at it, we judge people. And in this case, the discussion we were having, we were looking at a situation. Okay, I'll cross the line in politics. And in politics, we only have our senses, and we're going to talk about that, to feed us our information. And if you're looking at the same thing, just like picking up the string, we don't have a third person narrator tell us what we're looking at is really true. We have to make these leaps of faith. We have to figure out what is the reality. So we gather evidence. We look at what people say, what they do, what other people say about them, and you start painting a picture, just like they did in this piece of string, about people in real life. You do that with your friends. You do that with your family, don't you? So keep in mind, this is a very important point of view. One of the most famous stories of obsession, because Hauchecorne was obsessed, wasn't he? When you're obsessed, your mind gets clouded because you can't see anything else but what you're obsessed with. The object of your obsession. Isn't there a song like that? The object of your obsession. No, that's a different song. Sorry. Excuse me. Moby Dick. Ahab was the main character in Moby Dick. He was obsessed with the white whale called Moby Dick, who took off one of his legs at the knee. And it's a story of how Ahab hunts that whale. It's a long, long Herman Melville story. Beautifully told. Beautiful. Many chapters you can omit because it's all about whaling and how they get the blubber from the whale and the oil. Moby Dick is told through the eyes of Ishmael, the first person narrator. We don't have a third person narrator in Moby Dick. It's a first person narrator. In fact, that novel has one of the most famous opening lines in literature, in classical literature. Call me Ishmael. And there's that first sentence tell you who's narrating it, what the narrator's name is, and the rest is history, as he talks about it from his point of view. So we see things through Ishmael's eyes throughout the whole story. So when he's narrating what Stubb, one of the mates, I think it was the first mate, he says there's rules in life. Is sleep when you can. One of the rules of life is sleep when you can. And on a whaling ship, that made a lot of sense because, you're at sea. You don't know. Sleep when you can. Clearly, Hauchecorne's obsession is controlling him, isn't it? In fact, it kills him. His obsession kills him. The question you have to ask yourself is, why is he obsessed when, in fact, if it was a wallet instead of a string, he could have just done what he was accused of. He would have done it if he did it. If it was a wallet, No harm, no foul. He gets the wallet returned, right? He would be accused of being just a double dealer, which he is. But he doesn't want to be a double dealer, does he? Or in this case, even though he is a double dealer, it gets confusing, doesn't it? Point of view in making observations, sometimes we see what we want to see, don't we? Did you ever hear that? Well, Jimmy, you see what you want to see. Well, don't we all? And so what we have to do is try to train ourselves to see what's there, what's really there. I always use my color blindness as an example. I don't see red and green. You see red and green. So if you look at the same object and you say it's red, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. I know what I see when people say is red because I've trained myself to see your red. But if I try to tell you what I see, there's no words that I can figure out to bridge that gap between what I see and you see. I used to go to printing proofs when I was in advertising, and clients would be screaming, "It's too red! It's too red! What the hell is going on?" And I'd be standing there saying, "What?" And so I learned to go with the flow. "You're right, it's too red. Printer, come out here, adjust these inks." And so you would adjust it to take some of the red, because red is made with primary colors, right? It's made with colors. You learn enough about that from the spectrum. I used a better example here. Here's a number 6 or a 9 laying on the floor. Some people will say that's a 6, and other people will say that's a 9. So who's right? Look at this for a moment. Which side are you going to be on? Well, Jimmy, they're both right. I'm on the right side. That's a 6 or a 9, depending on your point of view. Exactly. It depends where you're standing. It depends, what you see. Everything depends on your point of view. In fact, observations are just that. They depend on your position in the universe. If you've never heard this, you're about to hear something. Through the very act of observing, you change reality. Whoa, what the hell are you talking about? Study your Einstein. No, instead, let me back off a minute. You're talking to somebody and a third person comes into the conversation. Does the conversation change? Of course it does. Because the third person changes the reality. It's no longer 2 people. It's 3 people. So it colors what you say, what you don't say, how you say what you say or don't say. Do you understand that? It's the same thing in the universe. Through the act of observation, you change things. For example, if you're in an elevator, no windows, and you're falling through space, ladies and gentlemen, I got news for you. You don't even know you're falling. You don't have a reference point. Everything depends on reference points, coordinates, your coordinates. Jimmy had a saying for many years, which is still true. When you're running into bad luck, change your coordinates. The hell does that mean, Jimmy? Well, it means as simple as getting up and turning around once and sitting back down. You're crazy. Well, no, I'm not. Because the minute you do something, you've changed the situation. You've changed the outcome. You've changed it. Remember what Heraclitus said, you can't step in the river in the same place. You can't do it. You can't do it. So if you're having a run of bad luck, change your coordinates. Change them. Do something different. Stop. Stop for 5 seconds. And you know this to be true. Geez, Jimmy, if I was only a couple of seconds difference, I wouldn't have hit that car. You're right. Change your coordinates. If you need a reference point to prove your observations, don't you? You need that reference point. Just like he needed to see Hauchecorne bend down and pick something up. Then it all fell into place. Somebody lost the wallet. Aha, that's what I'll do. I'll make it up. But we know he picked up strength because the third person narrator told us. We don't have third person narrators in life, do we? To say what is true, what is not true. We have to judge because we are all first person narrators in this story called life. Except to ourselves. We are our third person narrators. We know the truth about ourselves. We may not like to admit it all the time. right? In fact, if you do introspection, if you go down to find out who you really are, like the caterpillar says in Alice in Wonderland, who are you? Sometimes you won't like what you see. But we're not going to go there right now. I gave you the colorblind example. So it's really too bad about Hauchecorne's obsession, isn't it? Do you know people with similar obsessions? Try to help them. They need help. If they are truly obsessed, if they can't stop the obsession for a few minutes, wow. I can't imagine. Sometimes I'm obsessed with classical literature. I've got to read this. I think that's a good obsession. Thought. In Aristotle's concept of truth, thought refers to the underlying idea, which we talked about, truth, obsession, right? And it's the meaning and a deeper meaning to the audience to contemplate and understand the hero's downfall. That's what we've been doing in this analysis. So the piece of string, besides obsession, truth. What is the truth? Seems to be one of the main themes. What is the truth? You can't handle the truth. Remember Jack Nicholson, Few Good Men? We know it was the piece of string. We do know this. That was the truth. We also know that the wallet was returned. What we don't know is if Maladine lied or not. I think we can safely conclude after this analysis that he did. He made it up to get even with them because he had a grudge. I think we proved that. But we never will know the real truth. We're going to have to well, Jimmy, I don't believe you. That's okay. You don't have to. I don't have to. The mayor didn't go far enough in believing just Maladine, did he? Did he? He believed Maladine to be honest. Was he? Is he? I don't know. That's not the point. The point is Hauchecorne couldn't let go. He couldn't let go. Look at the evidence. Hauchecorne is not from Gonnerville where the story takes place. He's from Bertaux. That's about an hour walk if you look at the towns on a map. Hauchecorne was first described as a thrifty man. Thrifty. Thrifty. Stingy? Thrifty. He's not stingy. He's thrifty. Reflected that anything which might come in useful was worth picking up. Anything that might come in useful is worth picking up. Is that true? Well, it's free. So he bent down with some difficulty. He suffered from rheumatism. So it's not easy to pick up this string, but he picked it up anyway. And he was about to, there it is. Okay. He's an out-of-towner. He quarreled with someone who lived in Gonnerville. He is examined by the mayor of Gonnerville. You get it? They stuck together. This is the truth, is probably Maladine created that story because he had a grudge. And he knew his character well enough to know how he would react to that story, so he told the mayor. Besides, who would pick up a piece of string? Who would do that? Well, a poor person, perhaps, right? And maybe not. What are in the homeless, things that they carry around? What did they pick up? Maybe he did or he didn't know just how insistent Hauchecorne would be. That is enough to kill him. Maybe he didn't know that this thing would kill him, this accusation. That's my interpretation. But more important, the theme of this story is not to become too obsessed. Obsession kills. It kills the obsessed target. It kills the obsessor, the obsessee, right? Obsession's not good. And Aristotle's golden mean, the golden mean, have you ever heard that? Write that down and look it up. That's a concept that primarily comes from his Nicomachean Ethics. He wrote a book on ethics, where he writes that virtue, goodness, is finding the balanced middle ground between two extremes, one excess, one deficiency. Essentially saying a moderate approach to life's challenges is the best. Moderate. I'm a moderate. What does that mean? I'm in the middle. The golden mean. Mean is another word for average, right? That's the ideal virtuous state. But is it? Is that the best rule? Never go to excess and never be deficient. Well, pick a topic, right? So pick a topic. What? Eating. All right, let's take eating. You don't want to go to two extremes. You don't want to starve yourself, nor do you want to, overeat, right? You don't want to overeat. So you got to stay in the middle. So you stay in the middle. And that could be any topic. But, like I told you, that's a dangerous concept. You never know what's enough until you know what's more than enough. Staying in the middle is also sometimes dangerous. What do you mean, Jimmy? You just told us it's a good thing. Of course, it's a good thing to stay in the middle. Don't weave, right? Don't go off. Stay in the middle of your lane. There used to be a ride in Chicago called Riverview, and they used to have shoot the chutes where you get on this big boat and you go gliding down this thing into the water and just crash. But as you're getting into the boat, they say, keep your hands on inside the boat. Don't put your hands outside the boat. Hold on to the rail. They would keep saying that. Keep your hands inside. Why? Because as this boat comes flying down there, you might lose an arm if you stick it out too much because you're coming down this channel, right, into the water. So the middle ground is really a safe place to be. Stay in the middle. Don't go too far left. Don't go too far right. Even when you're driving, you want to stay in the middle of your lane. But if you've never done excess one way or the other, then it's hard to say what excess is. That's that William Blake thing. You never know what's enough until you know what's more than enough. You have to know, as Clint Eastwood says in a movie, I forgot the name of it now, where he plays a Marine, man must know his limitations. You have to know your limitations. You have to, not just men, women. You cannot live long if you don't know your limitations, right? You can't do it. Can't do it. Even if you do know your limitations, sometimes you don't live long. Some live longer than others. But anyway, I like Aristotle. So courage is a virtue, but too much courage is recklessness. You see what I'm saying? And too little courage is cowardice. So you should hang around the middle. Although if you have too much, sometimes it's important to be reckless, isn't it? No, Jimmy, don't go there. Okay, I'll drive that back. Stay in the middle. Diction's the third most important thing in Aristotle's lineup that makes good tragedy. And I would be negligent if I didn't touch on the beautiful language of this third-person narrator. And I'm not going to read this all, but I encourage you to read the opening. On all the roads around Gonnerville, the peasants and their wives were making their way towards the little town, where it was market day. What a beautiful opening, right? He paints a picture with words in your mind. The beauty about classical literature is they use these words to create images in your mind. Not everybody ever, if you've never been to Gonnerville, it doesn't matter. But you know they're going to a town called Gonnerville. All the roads, not just one road, there's a lot of roads that lead there. Peasants are coming there with their wives, and they're coming there because it's market day. You ever been to a market? You go to open markets sometimes. Even today, they have what? Farmers markets? The men were plodding along, their bodies leaning forward with every movement of their long, bandy legs. Hyphen, see the hyphen there? Legs deformed by hard work, by the pressure of the plow, which also raises the left shoulder and twists the spine, by the spreading of the knees required to obtain a firm stance for reaping, and by all the slow, laborious tasks of country life. Isn't that, you can almost feel and see, close your eyes as he's reading, you can almost see these peasants walking there with their bent shoulders and their knees bowed because of what, plowing. This isn't, modern day farming with tractors. This is manual physical labor that takes a toll on your body. Their blue starched smocks, shining as if they were varnished. They shine them up. Why? It's market day. They got to look good. Decorated with a little pattern in white embroidery on the collar and cuffs, bellied out around their bony frames like balloons ready to fly away. They're so full of starch. Some of you probably don't even know what the hell starch is, right? Nobody uses starch nowadays, although when you go to dry cleaners and take your shirts, they'll always ask if they're worth their weight in, as a dry cleaner, do you want it starched or not starched? Your collar starched, your cuffs starched or not starched. But their whole, their smocks were starched, shiny, and they're like balloons. They're ready to fly away with a head and an arm and 2 feet sticking out of each one. They look like caricatures, don't they? Beautiful. It's a beautiful first paragraph. Some were leading a cow or a calf by a rope, while their wives hurried with the animal by whipping their haunches with a leafy branch. The women carried I'm not going to read it all, but you see what I'm saying? Let me go to the end here. Everywhere was the smell of cow sheds, milk, manure, hay, sweat, that sharp, unpleasant odor of men and animals, which is peculiar to people who work on the land. Ever been to a farm? Jimmy stepped in cow dung when he was a kid. My uncle used to have a farm in Wisconsin. We used to go there in the summer for a couple of weeks vacation. It was cheap, the uncle, right? Stay with the uncle. And did you ever step in cow dung? It's a treat. But there's certain smells that come to you, and you can tell when you're near animals. And if dogs have that when they haven't had a bath in a while, don't they? And this all happens before he introduces the characters. All of this, he's setting us and painting a beautiful picture of a market day in Gotterville. The square in Gotterville was crowded and confused with the mass. So how the hell did Meladine see this guy pick up a piece of string? You see, there's people everywhere. Everywhere. Why does the narrator paint this picture? Why does he do that? To put us in the mood. He's got to frame this, right? Here's Gotterville. I took a little snapshot from Google. Here's Gotterville. Look at all the roads that lead to Gotterville. Down here, this away is where Berthaud lives. It's about an hour's walk. That maybe is this. This is a small section, but this is Gotterville. Look at all the roads that lead in there. Oh, thank you for reading with Jimmy. Thank you for reading the original story with me. And thank you for staying with me through this analysis. I hope I gave you something to think about. That's my goal. Read classical literature, learn how to lead our lives and learn how they lead their lives and how to lead ours. And that's really the joy that I have and the fulfillment that I have of sharing my analysis and my points of view with you. And you don't have to agree. That's why you can email me, Jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com. Let me put that email in here. Jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com. I'm also on YouTube now, ladies and gentlemen. I'm on YouTube. So come to YouTube and type in Reading with Jimmy, and you'll get the full brunt of what's on the website with all the stories. I encourage you to stick with it. Read the classics. Even if you stop reading with me, pick up a classical piece of literature and read it over and over again, a couple times. Study it. I just make it easier. Thank you very much. Have a great day and enjoy life. Please, please. Don't pick up any string. Okay. Bye.